During World War II, a young boy becomes captivated by Malena, the most beautiful woman in his town. But her beauty turns into a curse, making her the target of envy and cruelty. How much can she endure before breaking? Watch till the end to uncover her heartbreaking story. The story follows a boy named Renato who lives in a small town in Sicily. Because he owns a bicycle, the local children allow him to join their group. These carefree teenagers spend their days idling under the sun, with their primary interest being the fascination surrounding a beautiful and mysterious woman in town. Malena, as she is called, has jet black hair and a striking presence. Every day she walks through the town in high-heeled shoes, carrying an air of quiet sorrow in her enchanting eyes. The children would follow her from a distance, cycling ahead to wait for her at another spot, only to chase after her again as she passed by. For the first time in his life, Renato experienced a different feeling toward girls. Naturally, the curiosity of these young boys did not stop there. In class, they were constantly distracted, playing pranks on the professor. Ever since seeing Malena, Renato found himself in turmoil, unable to concentrate on his studies and even struggling to sleep at night. One day, the boys planned a trip to the beach. Their leader boasted that he had bought Malena a pack of cigarettes and exaggerated how gracefully she smoked. Taking his words to heart, Renato became determined to earn Malena's favor. The next day, he skipped school and ran to her house, hoping she would choose him to run an errand for her, perhaps to buy cigarettes, giving him a chance to admire her up close. But as the sun set, Renato still hadn't seen Malena. That day, he also lost in a sunbathing contest and was mocked by his friends. They teased him, saying that a boy in shorts would never grow up. Eager to prove his maturity, Renato secretly took his father's pants and brought them to the tailor to have them altered to fit him. When his father found out, he was furious and punished Renato in a way he would never forget. Renato's mind was constantly filled with thoughts of Malena. He often sneaked into her garden to watch her and even climbed a tree to peek inside her house. One day, he saw her dancing alone, holding a photograph of her husband. Her loneliness was evident in every movement. As she danced in the quiet of her home, Renato silently admired her like a goddess. He vowed that from that moment on, he would use his presence as a man to protect her. At night, he listened to the song Malena often danced to, imagining her presence before him. In his teenage mind, she became his ultimate dream. Malena's beauty did not go unnoticed by the men in town. Every step she took attracted lingering gazes. Some tipped their hats in admiration, while others lowered their heads in quiet respect. However, the women of the town saw her differently. Their admiration was laced with jealousy, and soon, rumors began to spread. Malena was accused of not conforming to society's expectations, as she was often seen entering a particular house. Determined to uncover the truth, Renato secretly followed Malena. One day, he saw her knocking on the door of the mysterious house and felt a deep sense of disappointment. Disheartened, he wandered into a cinema alone, lost in his own thoughts. Despite his dismay, he continued observing Malena. Meanwhile, gossip about her intensified. Whispers turned to ridicule and admiration turned into mockery. Yet Malena remained indifferent to the town's judgment. She continued visiting the house at the same time every day. One evening, Renato climbed onto the windowsill and finally learned the truth. The man she had been visiting was none other than her own father, a chemistry professor at his school. It was then that Renato realized his admiration for her had been misplaced. She was simply misunderstood. His respect for her only deepened. Then, one day, devastating news spread through town. Malena's husband, Major Nino, had died on the battlefield, but instead of sympathy, the townspeople showed little remorse. The women continued to whisper about her, throwing unkind words in her direction. The men, on the other hand, saw an opportunity. They believed that, at last, Malena would be within their reach. Renato silently swore that he would stand by Malena in his own way. When he heard the men in town sharing inappropriate thoughts about her, he secretly tampered with their drinks. When he heard the women spreading rumors that Malena spent time with other men, Renato found his own way to retaliate. He confided in God, expressing his deepest thoughts, hoping for protection for the woman he held in such high regard. Malena's clothes became a symbol of her inner struggles, and Renato watched over her from a distance. He even sought his own form of justice against those who spoke poorly of her. No one truly understood the pain in Malena's heart. She was caught in a whirlwind of challenges, surrounded by uncertainty, with no one to rely on. She was trapped in a sea of endless rumors and speculation. One night, the teenage Renato found a new way to feel closer to Malena. The next morning, his father discovered what had happened, realizing that his son had become rebellious and difficult to handle. Furious, he locked Renato in his room and nailed the windows shut. Renato protested by going on a hunger strike. On the fourth day, he began to speak nonsense. The doctor advised that he needed fresh air. With that, Renato was finally allowed to ride his beloved bicycle around the small town. During class, the professor received an urgent letter filled with lies, claiming that Malena had been with all the men in town. Enraged, the professor stormed out of the classroom. The students, always eager to stir up trouble, added fuel to the fire. Renato saw a group of boys threatening and cursing Malena. Ignoring everything else, he rushed into a fight. That night, Renato climbed a tree in front of Melena's house and saw Officer Leon kissing her hand as he left. At the same moment, the town's dentist arrived at Melena's house, only to be followed by his suspicious wife, who was ready to expose him. A crowd soon gathered, surrounding and confronting Melena. This incident became the hot topic of discussion in town. With people embellishing the story further, Melena was accused of destroying another family's happiness and was at risk of being taken to court. Melena went to her father's house again, but the door remained closed to her. Left with no choice, she sought out a lawyer to help her in court. When questioned about her relationship with the dentist, Melena honestly explained that he had only come to her house to deliver medicine for her father. Despite her explanation, the gossip continued to spread. The judge, however, dismissed any claims of a romantic relationship between Melena and Leon, stating that Leon had been reassigned because of her. Melena was heartbroken. At that moment, she finally understood. She was merely an object for Leon to entertain himself with temporarily. The lawyer, raising his hands in mock pity, declared that Melena had committed no crime. Her only crime was being too beautiful. So beautiful that she attracted both admiration and jealousy. That was the truth. However, in order to win the case, the lawyer took advantage of Melena's situation. Late at night, he went to her house, danced with her, and forced himself upon her. Renato's innocent and beautiful dreams of Melena were all written in a love letter. During class, he imagined his teachers as Melena, which made the real teacher furious, causing the entire class to laugh at him. Renato finally got to wear long pants just as he had always wished. He took another step toward becoming a man. One day, he saw Melena meeting the lawyer. However, before things could progress, Melena's mother intervened, leading to the lawyer discarding Melena without a second thought. Left with no other options, Melena struggled to survive. She had no means to buy food and was forced into desperate measures. As the war intensified, fear spread through the town. Then, tragedy struck. Melena's father was buried under rubble. Though the townspeople tried to rescue him, he did not survive. Once again, Melena suffered the loss of a loved one, but even in her grief, she could not find peace. The men of the town took this as an opportunity to harass her under the guise of offering condolences. Melena was filled with resentment. Why was her life so miserable? She had no way to escape and no answers. Perhaps she had to change the way she lived. That night, under the flickering candlelight, Melena sat down and cut her long hair. From that moment on, in order to survive, she no longer turned away the men who came to her door. Renato saw everything. Heartbroken, he shed tears. The goddess he had worshipped was now being reduced to a shell of her former self. With her new red hair, Melena walked gracefully through the streets. She sat in front of a cafe, smoking a cigarette, while the men around her fought to light it. Soon, the Nazis took over the town. Melena became involved with a German soldier, which fueled the townspeople's jealousy even further. They labeled her with cruel names. Renato's mind was in turmoil as he imagined Melena with the German soldier. His mother, seeing her son's distress, took him to the church, where the priest and nuns blessed him. But his father understood that growing up was something Renato had to experience for himself. He took Renato to a brothel. Meanwhile, American forces arrived, liberating the town. The people cheered in celebration. But on the other side of town, Melena was being cruelly attacked by a group of vengeful women. They struck her with towels, venting years of hatred upon her. After a relentless assault, they cut off her hair. The men who stood watching did nothing to stop them. Humiliated and in pain, Melena was left in the middle of the street, stripped of her dignity. But to the people around her, she was nothing more than an object of ridicule. Not long after Melena left town by train, Renato sat at a distance, watching as she disappeared into the horizon. The sunset reflected over the sea. With it, Renato buried his secret love for Melena deep within his heart. After the war ended, the town lay in ruins, but then Melena's husband, Lieutenant Nino, returned. He had not died in battle, though he had lost an arm. Nino came home to find his town unrecognizable, filled with refugees. Desperate to find Melena, he searched for her, but the townspeople only humiliated him further. Renato, witnessing this, helped Nino stand up but remained silent. That night, Renato wrote down everything that had happened to Melena and secretly gave it to Nino, hoping he would find his wife. Later, the town returned to its usual way of life. Renato, too, moved forward. He now had a girlfriend, and as they walked through the streets, he greeted people like an adult. But one day, Nino returned bringing Melena with him. The same people who once tormented her now greeted her as if nothing had happened. Melena faced them all without fear, responding as if the past had never existed. On the way home, Melena's fruit basket tipped over, and her fruit scattered everywhere. Renato immediately rushed to pick them up for her. Only then did Melena truly notice the young man who had secretly loved her all this time. This film, released in Italy in 2000, is set during World War II. The movie ended with Renato riding his bicycle in the opposite direction of Melena. But just before disappearing into the distance, he turned back for one last glance. Thanks for watching this recap. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to comment below and tell me what movie or series you want me to recap next.